All right, let's jump into this deep dive. We got a ton of fan requests to break down Asylum Underground Wrestling's Sanatorium event. And honestly, looking at this card, I can see why. It's stacked, high flyers, brawlers, you name it, and some pretty wild storylines brewing, too.
Yeah, and it really felt like every single match wasn't just a standalone thing. It felt like each one was pushing the bigger story forward.
Exactly. And they set the tone right off the bat with that opening match. Mixed gender tag team, Nick Zulrich and Sujin Park taking on the Mexican Nightmare and La Banshee. What did you think of that matchup? Just initial impressions.
I was really drawn to the clash of styles.
Mm-hmm.
You had Nyx with her high-flying, almost acrobatic style, and they get Sujin Park, whose strikes are just so precise, so powerful. And then on the other side, you got the more traditional lucha libre style of the Mexican Nightmare and La Banshee just bringing that hard-hitting offense.
Yeah. And the crowd was so hyped for this one. I mean, the place erupted when Sujin landed that spinning roundhouse kick on La Banshee. Did that catch your attention too?
Oh, absolutely. That's Sujin's Taekwondo background shining through right there.
Yeah.
The precision, the power, it's really something else. It really sets her apart.
Yeah, and it really felt like that was the turning point in the match. Nyx got the pin on the Mexican Nightmare after hitting the Twilight Driver.
It's interesting you mentioned the turning point. It wasn't just like a physical shift. It was psychological, too. You could see it. The Mexican Nightmare and La Banshee, they were rattled after that kick. Sujin, she really knows how to control the pace, the flow of a match.
For sure. All right, so moving on. After that crazy opener, we had Gaijin going up against Bam. Now, this one you specifically highlighted in your notes. What was it about this match that caught your eye?
Well, for me, it was the potential for a clash of styles, right? You've got Gaijin, this absolute powerhouse. He's all about wearing his opponents down, with strength and those brutal strikes. And then you got Bam. He's agile, quick. Love those high-flying moves.
Yeah, and Bam really brought it. That top rope elbow drop he hit was insane.
Oh, totally. Yeah. But you got to give it to Gaijin. His resilience was incredible. Remember how he powered out of that pin attempt after that elbow? Talk about tenacity.
He does not give up, that's for sure. And then he finished it off with the Rising Thunder Bomb for the win. For anyone who hasn't seen it, it's a fireman's carry into a devastating power bomb. Once Gaijin locked that in, it was over.
That move really sums up Gaijin's style. It's not flashy or anything, but man, is it effective. Pure power, pure impact. And then from this display of power, we went straight into an all-out brawl with that backstage tag team match, the UN versus Twisted Threat.
Oh, man, this one was wild. You mentioned you were actually there live for this.
I was, and I gotta say, seeing a backstage brawl live is an entirely different experience. It's so unpredictable. The action goes everywhere, and anything can become a weapon,
Yeah, and the UN, Hector Raimundo and John Churchill, they just seemed to thrive in all that chaos.
They were brutal, no two ways about it. They used everything they could get their hands on. Trash cans, steel chairs, they even used a catering table. I think they were really enjoying themselves. Unleashing all that aggression.
That spine buster through the table was just nasty.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And in that environment, that move sent a message. They're not messing around. They're here to dominate.
Absolutely. All right, so then we headed back to the ring for this high-energy 8-woman tag team match. Southern Comfort Kitty Wildside and Backwoods Barbie, they teamed up with Rock and Roll Rolly Polly and Lillian Quinn to take on Havoc Tyron Hunt and Izzy Fenrir and the Extreme Scream Queens Rebecca and Cassie Binns. I mean, where do we even start with this one?
I think it's really interesting to look at the contrast here. On the one hand, you have Southern Comfort and Rock and Roll, known for their charisma, the chemistry they have in the ring, and just how they work the crowd. And then you have Havoc and the Extreme Scream Queens. They're bringing this more intense, almost brutal approach to their matches.
Yeah, it was like a collision of styles. You had these super bright personalities going head-to-head with this just hardcore take-no-prisoners mentality.
Exactly. And in the middle of all of that, Backwoods Barbie just stole the show. Her presence was undeniable.
Yeah, she's got this confidence, this swagger, and her in-ring skills, they're top-notch. I mean, that Southern slam she hit on Taryn Hunt to get the win, she scooped her up, slammed her face first into the mat. The place went wild.
That move really captured the spirit of Backwoods Barbie and her whole team, Powerful, decisive, and super entertaining. Love to see it.
Okay, so then things got really interesting with the 5-way Loco Eliminator match. Quick eliminations, high-flying maneuvers, and White Falcon just putting on a clinic. What do you think about these multi-person matches in general?
5-way matches, they can be a bit hit or miss. Sometimes it just descends into chaos. But when they're done well, they're amazing. They showcase the individual talent. but also push all these different storylines forward at the same time. And I think this one, it really hit the mark on both fronts.
I agree. It was fast-paced, kept the crowd guessing, and the athleticism was just off the charts.
White Falcon in particular really thrived in this environment. Some of his aerial maneuvers were just breathtaking.
Absolutely. Hurricane Ranas, springboard drop kicks, and then to finish it off, the shooting star press. I mean, he launches himself off the top rope, flips backward, and lands on his opponent. And he pulled that off in a match, this chaotic, incredible.
That move was more than just physical skill. He was using his head, too. He used the chaos to his advantage, waited for his moment, and then struck. It was a calculated risk that really paid off.
Yeah, that win had to be huge for him. He's definitely got some serious momentum going now.
This is a big turning point for White Falcon. He's always been talented, but this puts him in a whole new category. He can handle the pressure. He can win a high-stakes match. The question now is, what's next for him?
Good question, and one we'll definitely be digging into later. But first, we got to talk about the Triple Threat Falls Count Anywhere match. Ace Hawk versus Poppy Sloot versus Papa Mo. Now, you're a bit of an expert when it comes to these no DQ, anything goes matches. What's the appeal and how did this one measure up?
These matches, they get right to the heart of wrestling. No rules, no boundaries, just pure aggression. And this match, it did not disappoint. They brawled in the crowd, up the stairs, even used the arena itself as a weapon.
And Ace Hawk, it was like he was born for this environment. The chaos just fueled him. He was fearless.
Totally. And that deadly dive DDT he hit on Pappy Sloot, off a production crate, no less. It was crazy. He dives off something high, drives his opponent headfirst into the map. To pull that off in this match, in this environment, really says something about Ace Hawk.
And he got the pin right after that. Talk about a way to secure a victory.
It really embodies what a Falls Count Anywhere match is all about. Unpredictable, brutal, and in the end, Ace Hawk pushing himself to the limit.
It definitely lived up to the hype.
Without a doubt, wild from beginning to end.
Okay, and speaking of wild, we have to talk about the no-holds-barred match. Valentina Diaz versus Sandra Rhodes. This was personal. You could feel the animosity, and they held nothing back.
Yeah, the tension was palpable even before the bell rang. This rivalry had been building for weeks. This match felt like the culmination of all that bad blood.
Valentina was just possessed. It was like she wasn't just trying to win, she was trying to punish Sandra. Remember when she brought out that steel chair and...
It was unlike anything we've seen from her before. She was relentless, methodical, brutal. The way she used that chair, it was strategic, breaking down Sandra's defenses, both physically and mentally.
And then she finished her off with the crossroads clutch. It's a submission hold that targets the neck and spine, and Valentina locked it in with such intensity. You could see the pain on Sandra's face when she tapped out.
It wasn't just a submission. It was a statement. Valentina was letting everyone in the women's division know she is not to be messed with.
I'm really curious about this change in Valentina. We saw a whole new side of her at Sanatorium.
Yeah, it's a fascinating development. This win, the brutality of it, I think this is a turning point in her career. She's tapped into a level of aggression we haven't seen before. It's going to be really interesting to see how this new Valentina navigates the division.
Okay, after that intense match, we shifted gears completely. It was time for a masterclass in technical wrestling. Nikolai going up against Dominic Mercer in a submission match. A lot of wrestling purists were really looking forward to this one.
This was a chess match, plain and simple. Dominic Mercer, he's known for smooth transitions and chain wrestling. Going up against Nikolai, whose style is power, control, and just systematically taking apart his opponent.
The crowd was silent for a lot of this one. You could hear a pin drop while these two grappled, trying to outmaneuver each other. Was there a particular moment that stood out to you?
The way Nikolai countered Mercer's signature crossface. Mercer had it locked in. It looked like it might be over. But then Nikolai, using pure strength and leverage, he reversed it, transitioned into the Iron Curtain stretch. And that hold is brutal. It targets the legs and back.
Yeah, it was beautiful to watch. And there was no escaping it for Mercer. He had to tap out.
That reversal showed Nikolai's adaptability. He didn't panic when caught in the crossface. He stayed calm and then used his opponent's momentum to turn the tables. It was skill and strategy all in one.
Okay, we have covered a lot of ground here, but we've finally arrived at the main event. And it was a good one. A tornado tag match. Jacqueline Hyde, Jacob Jackal, and Adam Hyde taking on NY Corruption, Dark Assassin, and Dark Hustler. And we can't forget the Messiah lurking at ringside. Now, for those who don't know, a tornado tag match is basically no holds barred, all four competitors in the ring at the same time. Pure chaos.
Yeah, and this match lived up to that. You've got Jacqueline Hyde, These two forces of nature known for their power and just brutal offense, going up against NY Corruption, a very seasoned and cunning team. And then you add in the wild card, the Messiah, always ready to interfere, always trying to manipulate things.
Oh, he interfered, all right. Constantly at ringside, trying to distract Jekyll and Hyde, trying to give NY Corruption an advantage. But Jekyll and Hyde, they were ready for him. They anticipated his moves, countered him, and stayed focused on the match.
That's what's impressive. Staying focused in that chaos, anticipating the Messiah. That shows how much they've grown as a team. They weren't rattled, they were determined.
And that determination was on full display the whole match. Jekyll and Hyde just kept hitting those power moves, taking NY Corruption to the limit. And it all led to a pretty epic finish, right?
Absolutely. That Hyde bomb on Dark Hustler was devastating. It's a backbreaker drop right onto the knee. And then Jackal followed it up with a dead man's drop on Dark Assassin, a variation of a tile driver, drives his opponent headfirst into the mat. The impact of those moves, the crowd's reaction, it was electric.
And they got the pin after that. What a win to close out the show.
It was a huge win for Jekyll and Hyde. It showed they can handle the pressure, overcome adversity. Even with the Messiah meddling, they defeated a top team like NY Corruption. Really solidifies their place as a force to be reckoned with in the tag team division. But it does raise some questions. What's next for them? How will the Messiah respond to this loss? Man, Sanatorium really felt like kind of a turning point for a lot of these wrestlers. We saw some incredible skill,
Okay.
aggression, strategy. What does it all mean for the future of AEW?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? Some amazing performances, a few upsets I didn't see coming, and some new contenders making a name for themselves. Feels around the whole landscape of AEW is shifting.
Totally. And one of the most interesting things to me is White Falcon. That win in the five-way Loco Eliminator, it wasn't just impressive, it was a statement.
Yeah, it wasn't just those high-flying moves. He was smart about it. Calculated.
Yeah.
And tough, too. Remember when he bided his time, waited for the right opening, and then bam, that shooting star press to win it all.
Yeah, that calculated risk-taking, that's what separates the good from the great.
Right.
You don't always see that in these multi-person matches. He could have gotten lost in the chaos, but he didn't. He used it. He was a master class in knowing where you are in the ring and just executing.
He leveled up at Sanatorium. No doubt about it. So what's next? Could we see him challenging for the AEW championship?
It's definitely a possibility. He can handle the pressure. He's got the fans behind him, and he can back it all up in the ring. He's a serious contender now. I wouldn't be surprised if he sets his sights on that championship.
And speaking of contenders, we got to talk about Jekyll and Hyde. That win over NY Corruption in the main event was dominant, brutal, and honestly, a little scary.
Their power, the aggression, and how they worked together, it was all there. But the most impressive thing to me, how they handled the Messiah's meddling.
Oh yeah, they did not let his mind games get to them. They saw it coming, countered him, and stayed focused. A sign of a team that's maturing.
Exactly. Pressure didn't rattle them. They embraced it. And that's what separates the champions from the rest. Mental toughness. That ability to stay focused when things get crazy. That's what Jekyll and Hyde showed everyone at Sanatorium.
So is this win enough to put them in line for a shot at the AEW Tag Team Championship?
I think it's got to be. They beat a top team like NY Corruption. They've got the momentum, and the fans are loving them. I wouldn't be shocked to see them challenging for those titles soon.
But we can't talk about them without talking about the Messiah. Always a thorn in their side, and his influence in AEW just keeps growing.
He's such a manipulator, a strategist. He's playing the long game. It's not just about wins and losses. He wants control. Control over AEW, control over the narrative. And Jekyll and Hyde, they're a threat to that.
They're unpredictable, they don't back down, they won't be controlled. Everything the Messiah hates.
Right. It's a clash of personalities, of ideas, a fight for the soul of AEW. And I think we're just seeing the beginning. This rivalry is far from over.
Okay, so we've talked about White Falcon, we've talked about Jekyll and Hyde. Can't forget about Valentina Diaz, that no-holds-barred match against Sandra Rhodes. Intense, brutal, and we saw a side of Valentina we haven't seen before.
Unbridled aggression.
Ooh.
It was almost frightening how intense she was. She wasn't just there to win. She was there to punish Sandra, to make a statement. And she did.
That crossroads clutch, brutal. You could see the pain on Sandra's face before she tapped. It was more than just a win, though. It was a transformation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It felt like we saw a new Valentina Diaz born at Sanatorium. She's shed that old persona, embraced something darker, and now she's a force to be reckoned with. I can't wait to see what's next for her.
So could this new aggression take her to the top of the women's division? Could we see her challenging for the AEW Women's Championship?
Absolutely possible. She has the skills, the intensity, and now the ruthlessness. That win over Sandra Rhodes was a message to everyone. Don't underestimate Valentina Diaz.
And then there's Nikolai. What a performance against Dominic Mercer in that submission match. A masterclass in strategy in the art of submission wrestling.
It was a purist's dream, that match. Two incredibly skilled wrestlers, both at the top of their game. A battle of wits and technique. It was like chess, but with bodies. Just amazing grappling.
And Nikolai, it felt like he was always a step ahead, countering Mercer's moves, then bam, that reversal into the Iron Curtain stretch. Brilliant.
That showed his adaptability. And his knowledge of submissions, it's deep. He didn't just overpower Mercer, he outsmarted him. It was dominance, physically and mentally.
So where does this put Nikolai in the singles division? Could he be a contender for the AEW championship?
He's definitely in the mix now. He beat a top submission specialist like Dominic Mercer, and his style, it's methodical, it's calculated, makes him a threat to anyone. He's one to watch for sure.
Man, it feels like Sanatorium really shook things up. New contenders are rising, and the Messiah is always there in the background, scheming, manipulating, pulling strings. It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out.
And that's what makes AEW so great. It's not just about what happens in the ring. It's about the stories, the characters, the clashes. Anything can happen. The lines between good and bad get blurry, and the stakes are high.
All right, so as we head into the final part of our deep dive, what were your biggest takeaways from Sanatorium? What are you most excited to see in the coming months?
We saw new contenders emerge, characters evolve, and the Messiah's influence just keeps growing. The future of AEW, it's uncertain, but one thing's for sure, it's going to be wild. So buckle up and get ready for the next chapter.
You know, we've talked about a lot of the individual matches and the storylines, but I think one of the biggest things that comes out of Sanatorium is momentum, right? Certain wrestlers just really took their shot and made a statement.
Yeah, momentum is huge in wrestling. It's not just about winning, it's how you win, the impact you make, the impression you leave on the fans, on everyone.
Absolutely. And we saw that with White Falcon, with Jacqueline Hyde, with Valentina Diaz. They had those big wins, those moments that felt like a turning point in their careers.
And that's why the future of AEW is so exciting right now. All these shifts in power, the storylines developing. You just get this feeling that anything can happen.
It feels like almost like the start of a new era for AEW, you know?
Yeah.
The old guard is being challenged, new contenders are stepping up, everything's changing.
And the big question, where does the Messiah fit into all of this? He's always working in the background, pulling strings, trying to control things. Does he try to bring these rising stars under his control? Or do they become a problem for him?
He is such a wild card, the Messiah. Always keeps you guessing, and he just adds this layer of unpredictability to everything. He's the puppet master, but what happens when the puppets start fighting back?
That's the big question.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to keep everyone on the edge of their seats. It's what keeps us all coming back for more.
All right, so as we wrap up this deep dive into Sanatorium, what are your final thoughts? What were the big takeaways for you? What are you looking forward to the most in the coming months?
I think what I'm most excited about is the potential. We saw flashes of brilliance from so many wrestlers, both the established stars and the new ones coming up. The question is, who's going to grab that momentum and run with it? Who's going to shape the future of AEW?
I think that's a great note to end on. Sanatorium wasn't just another event, it was a catalyst. It set a lot of things in motion, kicked off some new rivalries, and opened up a ton of possibilities. I'm definitely along for the ride to see where it all goes next.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.